whenever you're ready.
I was never idealistic, I never watched Saving Private Ryan or Full Metal Jacket and was like, that's me. Like, I gotta do that. I think I just wanted to be one of the good guys, just go over there, protect my brothers. To be fair, most of us were broke, had shit going on, When you ain't got nothing, you ain't got nothing to lose.
Were you afraid?
Fuck yeah. You don't go hopping through people's backyards in my hood in the middle of the night unless you want to get shot. So I figured, I mean, why should this be any different? And the thing is that nobody thinks it's gonna be them. I mean, certainly not until the gate on the bird comes down and you see the terrain and you feel the heat on your face, smell the air. It becomes pretty fucking real. It's just not what you think it's gonna be like, and maybe that's just life. But it couldn't be further from those glossy commercials of be all you can be, But look, I didn't want to kill anybody, if that's what you're thinking.
That never crossed my mind.
Hi everyone, I'm Steven Grayhm. I'm the writer, director, and star of Sheepdog.
And I'm Matt Dallas. I'm Steven's co-star in Sheepdog.
And we just want to take this opportunity to thank you for joining us and learning more about our 14-year journey to bring Sheepdog to the screen. In 2011, my car broke down 3 hours north of Los Angeles. And I called a local tow truck company. And the local guy that came out was like, saddle up, partner, we got a 3-hour drive in. And I was really tired because I'd been driving through the night. And during that ride, he began to open up about, the challenges he was having in his marriage, being the father of 3, his financial hardship, and then he shared all the copious amounts of medications that he was on that were tethered to his military service, his deployments overseas. And, throughout that conversation, I don't think I said but 3 words, and I just listened. And so when we got back to Los Angeles, I gave him a hug and I thanked him for getting me home safe, and I looked into his eyes and there was this look of like, I was certain I was never gonna see him again. And I felt like that's probably what he wanted. And I remember that was the seminal moment, like that's what lit the spark within me. That it wasn't just curiosity, it was this like sense of responsibility. And it was like a month later, I met you.
Yeah, I remember you came to me and you said, I've got this idea for, I don't know if it's a screenplay or what it is, but I really feel like it's important that we get out on the road and find, are there more men and women who are experiencing this, kind of picking cities based on, military bases or whatever. But we had nobody that was agreeing to talk to us, so it was a very empty map, except for sort of an idea.
Yeah, and it was George Rice, Staff Sergeant George Rice. He's a retired Army veteran, 6'5", just a gentle giant, and he called Gold Star parents. That's a family member who's lost somebody in combat, and so we met with Nick Carbonell, we met with Brad Link, Boniva Jacquet. I mean, the list goes on, and they all informed this story that informed the screenplay. And I think the turning point in my writing on that was that same year, later that year, there was one particular guy, Sergeant Brad Link, and Brad was a severely traumatized Army veteran who had seen it happen firsthand, of seeing 3 of his men gunned down in a sheep pen in the middle of the night. Brad talked about this this crack in the sheep pen wall when they were doing a village sweep in the middle of the night in Iraq. And it was the thing that haunted him the most. It wasn't just the fear of enemy combatants that were hiding and within the village, but it was the ominous aspect of this crack in the wall that he said he felt like was pulling his soul. And 20 minutes later, that's where they received contact, and he lost 3 of his men. It was one of our first missions as a unit. And the intel from inside the village was that there was 20 known targets trying to hide caches of large weapons, you know, in these tunnel systems. It's like Viet Cong shit. It was fucking scary. So we dropped flyers on all the villages, homes, and any military-age man that was left behind would be suspect. By the time we were boots on the ground, we had lost Odark 100, meaning that our plan to get in and out before sunrise had gone to shit. So this was going to become very dangerous, very quick for us. We breached the first few homes. It was just mostly women, children, some elderly people, you know. And I think we started to think, like, maybe we are winning the hearts and minds. Like maybe all this time that we've been in this country meant something. And that's when I came upon this 6-foot cinder block sheep pen wall, and I knew we weren't all coming back.
Why is that?
There was this 2-foot crack in the wall. And within those 2 feet, I knew it was going to be bad. It was just evil. Ominous, you know. Just, you could feel it in your soul. It was just like sucking it like a vacuum. I continued on, breaching doors, got to a few more village homes, and that's when 3rd Squad took contact. We rushed to their position, and sure enough, there was Brandon, trying to get into that pen to get to our guys. I remember this immense weight that I felt on set to do these families justice, right? To do these Gold Star families justice that had lost their 3 kids in that sheep pen.
Yeah, and I remember you went to the White House for a Gold Star family event.
Yeah, it was 2011 Christmas, and Beneva Jacquet, who's the Gold Star mother, had invited me as her guest, and she was really insistent that I see it for myself of like what these families carry with them in the sacrifice that they make collectively. Now, she had known that I had met with especially the guys that were in her son's squad that was killed in that sheep pen. And we were at a restaurant. I remember it was Christmas time in DC. We got the check, and then as we were walking out, she grabbed my arm and she said, "Hey, would you have one more drink with me?" And I said, "Sure." And I sat down, and there was like a beat, and she looked into my eyes and she said, "So how did my son really die?" And I remember like time stood still, and I was trying to decide in that moment if I was going to tell her, because she knew I had met with many of the guys in her son's unit that either witnessed it or were there during that military operation. And I thought to myself, if my mom was sitting at a bar in DC and I wasn't here, and somebody had the opportunity to potentially give her peace, that I would want them to do it. And I didn't want to. And so I get bar coasters, and I start showing her. like using the bar coasters as military villages, and packets of like sweet and low and so on for where the vehicles were and the sheep pen and everything. And I went into full detail. But I left out the end part of what happened to him. And she said, I need to know if my boy suffered. A mother's got to know, because a mother will always picture it 10,000 times worse. And that's the line I gave Von D. Curtis Hall in the movie when he's asking me about his son's passing. And Calvin gives him that piece. And he just turned to me, and there was this look on his face. And it was like the entire reason that he was put on this earth was to go into that pen after his men. And that's when he went through that 2-foot crack in the wall, and he never came back.
Did my son suffer? Father's gotta know. I can only imagine it 1,000 times worse.
Brandon took 10 AK rounds and was grenaded by the enemy who were hiding under that thatch in the sheep pen. When we got in there, we smoked him pretty good. Deacons and Edmonds were KIA, but Brandon was still alive. I performed life-saving tourniquet, quick clot to stop the bleeding, but he hadn't worn his plates that day, so he had sustained massive trauma to his upper torso and lower right side from the shrapnel. Your boy wasn't scared, Mr. St. Germain. He knew he was loved. Brandon died right here in between these two village homes, 6,000 miles away from here. Sorry I couldn't bring your son home, sir.
I think I have that drink now.
One of the most heartbreaking, but one of the most powerful scenes I feel like that you have in the film is when your character goes to a local pawn shop to return his medals, whether it's for money, whether it's just a safekeeping place. And we had Gary, who's the actual pawn shop owner, who's a Vietnam veteran,
Yeah.
as it was written in the screenplay. And he reminds your character that he can't take them because of the Stolen Valor Act. And I wanted him to know, I wanted the audience to know that the brotherhood is so deep that he saw the humanity and the pain in your character's eyes, that to protect you and knowing your desperation
And recognizing it.
in its own self, that he says to you, why don't I hold on to these for you? And you can come back and get them whenever you're ready.
Right. I think he really recognizes, where Daryl's at, maybe in himself or, some of his brothers or friends that he served with. And it comes so unexpectedly because you see somebody who really does smile through the pain, and through the whole film is just leading with such love and such a yearning to make other people happy. And so we constantly see him, just like spreading love. And it's hard, like, I think, unless you're somebody who maybe has experienced this or has somebody in their life who's experienced it, like, you don't necessarily see the signs that he might come to this place of walking into the pawn shop and trying to turn over his, bringing in his medals. And I think that just as an experience or as a journey it's so common for so many people. And I think that to see that represented in this film was a really sort of special moment. I think for me, that scene really was, like, all of the 14 years, like, leading up to that scene, it felt like all of those stories that we had heard, all of the kitchen tables that we'd sat around, all the, you know, the smoky dive bars where people had shared their stories with us, it was all leading up to that moment. And it was like, I feel like unlike any other moment in the film were all of those stories really alive within Daryl. And it really was like a moment of saying goodbye to that character after, you know, 14 years of talking about it, of thinking about it, I don't know, of researching all of everything was sort of in that moment.
I remember you like entering frame the first time I was setting up the shot, and the first time, and and I had to roll because you were there. You were there. And I could see it in your face.
You know, it's funny. Yeah, I was there, but it was also, that scene was supposed to be shot initially at the beginning of production.
Yeah,
we were supposed to shoot it like
yeah.
day one, and it just kept getting pushed and pushed. And I even like had this moment where I was like, I don't think we're going to shoot this scene. I don't think we're going to make it. But and then we got and it was on the last day of shooting.
Yeah.
And we had a whole rest of the day to get to. So it even felt, I don't want to say rushed, because I definitely was allotted the time that was necessary, but it wasn't necessary like to have the time, because it was like, as soon as, you know, like cameras were up and lights were up and you called action, it was like everything was just there. And it didn't even, it felt almost out of body. Like it was not me there. It was, you know, like I said, all of those stories. It was Daryl. It was everything that just came through in that moment.
Buying or selling today?
Oh, just these.
Are these yours?
Yes.
Under the Stolen Valor Act, we can't buy these. I tell you what, how about I hang on to them? And whenever you're ready, you come back and get them.
How much for this?
I remember there was this feeling, a weight and a heaviness inside that pawn shop. And I'd said this to you afterwards when we wrapped, that I could feel all of the stories that have been shared over the years with us in there. And in your quiet desperation, your characters, as he's essentially attempting to pawn his medals. And then in the desperation that was in your eyes, in Gary, the pawn shop owner, actor, staying there with you and seeing it as a real Vietnam veteran, really
Absolutely.
identifying that. And it's just so heartbreaking, but you both brought the humanity out in each other.
I would tell you, even in between takes, it was very much that way. Like he could tell that, you know, like the sort of like fragile line that I was walking, and he was just so warm and comforting in that moment to be that support that Daryl needed, but even that maybe I needed in that moment.
Yeah. Well, I just want to tell you I love you, brother.
I love you,
thanks
brother.
thanks for going on the journey.
It's been an honor.
Thank you so much for taking the time to spend with us, to hear our stories of our 14-year journey of bringing Sheepdog to the screen. It's been our life's greatest honor to be able to represent our men and women in uniform, our mental health care professionals, our Gold Star family members, our first responders, and their families. Thank you.
Thank you.